Okay, so today I want to talk about what makes a good life because I think this is a question that many have tried to answer, but I will attempt to answer it myself the best I can in this moment by presenting two examples of lives from two different people and comparing them and showing what made them great and what made them terrible. The first one is the life of Steve. Steve was a young boy who was born in a middle class family to two parents who never really wanted to have children anyway. They were both from abusive families themselves, and they were gonna repeat that same cycle all over again with him. He had one brother who was very different from him, more outgoing, and because of that, they were always disconnected. They had a large age gap of 8 years. And because of that too, they never really were friends in school. So he ended up being alone around the other kids. And he always preferred to stay on his own, self isolate, because his parents had made him understand how weak he was and how dangerous people could be to him. Over time, the other kids realized that he wasn't as sharp as them, he wasn't as socially acute, and he didn't like being around them. They took advantage of his weakness and bullied him and treated him badly. And over time, this only made him more bitter and want to be on his own even more. His family didn't do him much better. When he came at home, it wasn't a pause from the abuse. It kept going. His parents screamed at him, blamed him for everything, treated him badly, never taught him any skills. They expected a lot from him. They wanted him to be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, but they themselves hadn't achieved very much in life. They spent all their money instead of helping their children achieve greater goals. They spent it on lottery tickets or strange investment schemes. They were basically completely incompetent and expected extreme competence out of their children. Steve grew up in a very terrible environment. He never experienced anything good in his childhood. And in his teenage years, he was far too socially adept to ever interact with people. He stayed on his own and focused on his hobbies the best he could. It wasn't enjoyable, but it was all he had. He chose to take the path of hard work and try to achieve something of himself, even if his environment was difficult, even if his parents were very unhelpful. He still tried his best, and after a very long, difficult path in the schooling system, who didn't make him any gifts because he was himself having a lot of difficulties because of the type of person he was. He at some point managed to achieve a diploma and became a programmer. A couple of years later, in the job market of today, he manages to land a decent job, and he takes an apartment who is not too bad. Although everything is expensive, he managed to achieve something decent, and he has a life on his own. He doesn't have to live with his parents anymore and experience all their troubles. But it's just not it. He's alone. He doesn't have anything. He doesn't know anybody. It feels like there's a big hole in his life, and he can't really fill it. So when he comes back at home at 30 years old in his empty apartment, he pours himself a glass of his favorite alcoholic drink and drinks it. The second person is John. John is born in a slightly poorer family in a more rural area. His father was a fisherman, and his mother was at times a farmer, but mostly a stay-at-home mother. He had two brothers and two sisters. They grew up in a place where they could enjoy the nature, where they could see the animals, where his parents, who were loving and attentionate, showed them their craft, showed them their skills, taught them about life, and spent every waking moment with them. They were isolated from a lot of technology and a lot of the influence of the normal city. So they enjoyed a lot of activities, did a lot of exercise, They ran around. They made friends. They went to a local school where not many kids went, since it was a pretty rural town. But they enjoyed them. They spent all their years together. These classes didn't change since there wasn't many kids. So they all grew up with a bond with each other. Their parents were very invested and they all knew each other since it was a small community. They were like a big family in a way. His childhood was full of these kinds of moments where either with his siblings, friends, or with his parents, he would go enjoy the outside, enjoy the nature, have interesting discussions about themselves. He was happy with his lives. He liked fishing a lot with his father, and like his father, he wanted to become a fisherman. So after learning all the skills and going to a small fisherman's school, he came back and got interested in a company that his father had already worked in. He started, and since he had such a he had a passion for this kind of stuff, he performed very well. He loved what he did, and he was animated by the joy of life. He was an amazing fisherman, one of the best they'd ever had since his father, and his father congratulated him for his achievement. His siblings met once in a while to have dinner, and they enjoyed every moment of it. His life was full of enjoyment, and he didn't regret any moment of it. His fisherman job didn't pay so much, but since it was in a nice rural area, the home of his parents, he bought a home for himself. It wasn't too expensive, since it was pretty isolated, but it was good for him, because he had met a nice lady in school, who got married with him, and had a couple children. Already at 30 years old, he had two children, a nice wife, a nice home, and although he wasn't very wealthy, he didn't make very much, and lived in a pretty isolated area. He had a good life. He had friends, he had family, he had good memories, and he had a job that he liked. Now, if you compare these two people, one of them seems a little bit more better than the other one. Why exactly is not clear. Both of them could have been somewhat similar people, but their lives couldn't be any more different. The reality is, although one of them worked hard and the other one worked hard too, the difference in between these two people wasn't what they did. What difference between these two people? What happened to them? Who were their parents? Where did they grow up? Who were the peoples they met along the way? What experiences did they have? What opportunities did they have? These were the real differences. And psychologically, these two people could be very similar. They could even be physically similar. Although, no, it wouldn't be very likely. John is, in this story, much more physically gifted than Steve. That's why he could achieve relationships much easier. That's why he had success and popularity in social environments. It helped him a lot in his social development, and it made his life way more seamless and easy. But that wasn't all. It was also the psychology. Coming from an abusive family, Steve had received the genes of a difficult character who made life complicated. But John had received genes of someone who was easygoing and who saw life as a simple thing. He could enjoy it without an afterthought. And that was a gift that was given to him by his parents, who he never really came to understand, but made his life really enjoyable in a way. So many factors came there to make a good life and make a slightly less good life. Genetics, psychology, parents, place of birth, socioeconomic status, ancestry, friends, schools, city, siblings, personal actions to a small degree. All these things made the difference. And although one life seems very simple and might not look like the most rewarding, accomplished, impressive life compared to another. It is truly a good life. Although one doesn't have a big job or a decent job in a big city, in a new apartment, he lives in a rural area, is a simple person. He really achieved a life that could be deemed as good. And that is what I aspire to. That is what I wish I had, or at least something like it. But I think that is the answer, as far as I know, for now at least. I think that's what life is about. So yeah.